What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blueblood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, legendary retired Hall of Fame iconic superstar, boxer, multi-division world champion, only fighter in the history of the sport of boxing to come from junior middleweight, 154, go all the way to heavyweight and win a world title. In Roy Jones Jr. Roy Jones Jr. is the only guy in history to go from junior middleweight to heavyweight and become a world champion, right? And so with that said, Roy Jones, he's now a trainer, and he dibble and dabbles in being an analyst, boxing pundit. He has a podcast in which he's featured on with Antonio Tarver and Paulie Malignaggi. You know, so obviously Roy Jones is not short, never short on words, right? And so most recently they had the induction of the Hall of Fame, which Roy Jones was one of the fighters that was inducted. Another fighter that was there was a rival of Roy Jones, and that was James Toney, right? James Toney was present, right? And so with that said, James Toney and everybody else was weighing in on the highly anticipated undisputed welterweight showdown between Errol Spence Jr., undefeated, 3-belt, WBC, WBA, IBF, Ring Magazine, welterweight world champion, superstar boxer who is widely considered by many to be top 2, if not the #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, and Errol the True Spence Jr., who is 28 wins, no losses, no draw, 22 big wins by way of knockout, 32 years of age, 5'9.5" with a 72-inch arm reach, and his biggest rival to date, who was at the Hall of Fame, and that's undefeated 3-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the reigning WBO, World Boxing Organization welterweight world champion, who is widely considered by many to be the #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in Terence Crawford. Terence Crawford is 38 wins, no loss, no draw, 29 big wins by way of knockout. He is 34 years of age, 5'8" with a 74-inch arm reach. With that said, this makes for the biggest fight in the sport of boxing, and everybody's intrigued to hear about it. So James Toney, Terence Crawford was on hand. He was at the induction, the Hall of Fame induction. He had his fist, you know, made in stone, you know, and things of that nature. So James Toney, he weighed in on it, and James Toney, he stated that Errol Spence would be lucky to get past the 6th round, right? This is what James Toney had to say. He said Errol Spence would be lucky if he gets past the 6th round of this fight. Then, now to follow that up, Roy Jones was asked now about what James Toney had to say about the fight going to 6 rounds and Terence Crawford stopping Errol Spence in 6 rounds. And so Roy Jones, initially he stated that he was picking Terence Crawford because he just simply hadn't seen enough of Errol Spence, and he's seen enough of Terence Crawford. Well, now he says that he agrees with James Toney that the fight won't get past the 6th round because we don't know how Errol Spence is going to come back from the car accident. So he said, we don't know what version of Errol Spence we're going to get from the car accident, right? That he suffered back in October of 2019. That was 3 years ago. Errol Spence has had 2 fights since that car accident, okay? He fought 2-division world champion Puerto Rican superstar boxer Danny Swift Garcia, okay, back in December of 2020. And then most recently, April 16th of this year, in a massive unification showdown, he faced off against then WBA welterweight world champion Cuban star boxer Yordenis Ugas, in which he brutally dominated the fight and stopped Yordenis Ugas in the 10th round, broke Yordenis Ugas' ribs, his nose, and his orbital bone. And Roy Jones is telling the world that he still don't know how Terence Crawford is going to bounce back from the car accident. I said this yesterday in a stream I did, that I don't believe that Roy Jones even watches the career of Errol Spence. I don't think he's in tune with the career of Errol Spence, and I don't think he's in tune with the career of Terence Crawford. I think he may have witnessed a few fights from Terence Crawford and from Errol Spence, and I think from there, he just based his opinion on maybe a few fights he saw of both guys. Because he goes on to say that Errol Spence has not fought the best opposition. Well, the best opposition Terence Crawford has fought on his resume is two-time welterweight world champion, superstar boxer, Showtime Shawn Porter. And Shawn Porter is Terence Crawford's biggest name, biggest accomplishment on his resume outside of becoming undisputed. But as far as competition-wise, Shawn Porter represents the biggest challenge of his career, the biggest name on his resume. He fought Shawn Porter in November 20th of this year, right? November 20th of 2021, excuse me, is when he fought Shawn Porter. Errol Spence fought Shawn Porter September of 2019, in which he unified against Shawn Porter. Shawn Porter was the WBC champion. It was a unification bout. And he beat Shawn Porter. And he dropped Shawn Porter in the 10th round of that fight. And he clearly won the 11th and 12th round to separate himself in the fight as to who was the winner, right? That was 2019. The biggest name on Terence Crawford's resume is Shawn Porter. He fought him 2 years later. 2 years later, 2021. Okay? Also, right? When Shawn Porter fought Errol Spence, he was a world champion. It was a unification bout. When Terence Crawford fought Shawn Porter was the mandatory challenger. 2 years removed from losing to Errol Spence. Now, Terence Crawford, he dropped Shawn Porter in the 10th round twice, and Shawn Porter's father, trainer, and manager, Kenny Porter, saw enough and waved the white towel. Errol Spence dropped Shawn Porter in the 10th round of their fight, but it was late in the round. Shawn Porter got up, and Shawn Porter attested and said that he was hit and hurt. He was hit harder and hurt worse than when he got dropped by Terence Crawford, when he got dropped by Errol Spence. Right? The second biggest name on Terence Crawford's resume, if you put these two guys in their prime, right, would be former IBF welterweight world champion, British superstar boxer, Special K Kell Brook. Right? He beat Kell Brook in 2020. Errol Spence beat Kell Brook for his first title opportunity. Okay? His first world title opportunity in the UK. In the UK for his first title opportunity. That was his first title fight. And he beat Kell Brook in the UK. Terence Crawford, that was 2017. Terence Crawford beat Kell Brook in 2020. 3 years later, Errol Spence broke Kell Brook's orbital bone, the right orbital bone. Now people say, well, Kell Brook had an eye injury prior to that, right? When he dared to be great and fought Triple G, and Triple G broke his orbital bone, his left orbital bone. Well, Errol Spence broke the right orbital bone. Okay? When Terence Crawford fought him, he was 3.5 years removed from fighting at welterweight and fighting a big fight since the Errol Spence fight. And Terence Crawford stopped him in the 4th round. But Errol Spence broke his orbital bone for his first world title opportunity. These are the two biggest names on Terence Crawford's resume, yet Roy Jones is saying that Terence Crawford fought that better opposition. He fought Kell Brook 3.5 years after Errol Spence beat him and broke his orbital bone, and he fought Shawn Porter two years after Errol Spence beat him in a unification bout. These are the two biggest names on his resume. So how could he have fought the better opposition? And on top of it, Errol Spence has fought 4-division world champion, Mexican superstar boxer Mikey Garcia, who's a surefire first ballot Hall of Famer. And he fought Danny Garcia and beat Danny Garcia. And he fought and beat Lamont Peterson. These are the guys on his resume. But Roy Jones is saying Terence Crawford fought that better opposition. This is what leads me to believe when Roy Jones is saying that he'll definitely get stopped in the 6th round, and he agreed with James Toney because we don't know what we're going to get from Errol Spence since the car accident. It's confusing to me. Because he's had 2 fights since the car accident. The car accident was 3 years ago. And we've seen how he's looked, and he's gotten better from the Danny Garcia fight to the Yordenis Ugas fight, and he'll be better moving forward with the Terence Crawford fight. So again, like I said, it leads me to believe I'm a big fan, huge fan, and respect Roy Jones Jr. Love Roy Jones Jr. One of my favorite fighters, top 3 of my favorite fighters in the history of the sport of boxing. But in this situation, Roy Jones is not well versed on either one of their careers, and I don't believe that Roy Jones pays too close attention to boxing and the fighters outside of the fighters that he's training and that he's involved with, because that's an ongoing thing. A lot of athletes don't watch or don't care to entertain what goes on in their sport when they're not involved. It's normal. So in this case, where Roy Jones is saying he'll get stopped in the 6th round if he ain't the same guy coming before the car accident, that doesn't even add up. So let's see how this unfolds and plays out. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button, drop a comment in the comment section, let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV, all one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Roll. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.